on Fort Myers Beach. Tonight is the first of many meetings about the community. I was a little worried. I thought with the rain that we might not get anybody to turn out, but we've got a very good turnout, and we've got some boards in the back. I would go through and give everybody's name, but honestly, I would probably fail. I do know Bill. I saw Bill sitting in the back. He's the only Bill Spakowski. Those of you who don't know, he was instrumental at writing the original comp plan way back in the day. So, Bill, thanks for being part of the team. And just a quick synopsis of this really came, I believe Keith Wilkins was very involved in this when he was here as our interim town manager and started putting this whole thing in play. And we never thought it was going to go anywhere. And then all of a sudden Bill gave Anita and I a call one day, and he's like, "Are you guys going to partake in this?" And from there, it was kind of like, "What are you talking about? We didn't think it was going to go anywhere." Well, here we are, and this is all funded, if I'm not mistaken, by the EPA, is picking up the tab for all this design work. So with that, I'm going to let the town manager give you a few more specifics. But again, thank you very much for coming, and tomorrow's another day, and then Friday as well, correct? We have things going on through the day on Friday. So this is what we keep talking about, people coming out and being involved in hearing your voice. Otherwise, none of this stuff is going to happen. So good or bad, let them have it.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to take a moment to introduce our elected officials: Vice Mayor Jim Adderholt, Councilor Karen Woodson, Councilor Scott Safford, Councilor John King. Thank you guys for joining. It's important to me to have the people who I work for basically be here to go through this process and to look at everything. I think you're going to be amazed, and I think you're going to see a picture a few years ago of a former mayor in the slide presentation, because there is a connection to the past here. This group, and they'll talk more about that, is tied to the past here. They've been here before. This is not their first rodeo, as they say. So I want to welcome them. I'm going to turn it over to Drew. Let Drew come and take it away.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Drew Parker. I work for the Environmental Protection Agency in the Region 4 office out of Atlanta. But for the past year, I've been working with FEMA under what we call the Interagency Recovery Coordination Field Operations, or IRC for short. And what the IRC does is it brings together federal partners to meet with communities impacted by a major disaster declaration and devise some strategies that will help them move the ball forward on recovery and resiliency for long-term planning. And so, yeah. Thanks. And so one of the strategies that came up, and we spoke with the town of Fort Myers Beach about, and the mayor mentioned that Keith was one of our initial contacts well back about a year ago, I guess at this point, is these recovery and resiliency partnership projects. We refer to them as R2P2 for short, but it is a program that provides free technical assistance to communities impacted by a major disaster declaration. The funding comes from FEMA under a mission assignment to the EPA, and we administer these projects and shepherd the process forward for them in a partnership with them as a recovery support function. And the goal is to develop a set of community-driven conceptual designs that reflects any of the participating communities' long-term recovery visions, and that are poised to leverage federal, state, and nonprofit funding resources for implementation. And so down here in the coastal area of Southwest Florida, we have 3 communities that we are working with through this R2P2 process. Fort Myers Beach is just the first one that we're holding these meetings at. In July, we'll be going to the city of Sanibel and the city of Fort Myers to do similar outreach efforts with them. But we see the value of working through this long-term recovery process with all these communities because this area was hit probably the hardest in the state when Hurricane Ian came in 2022. We hope to maintain and understand the value of working together with other partners and outside groups to get to long-term planning goals that you all share for a vibrant and resilient community. And so, why Fort Myers Beach? not only was it ground zero for a lot of destruction, but there's a lot of opportunity that kind of gets born out of that. So we're here to kind of focus on a couple of the areas that the town has helped us narrow down our scope of work and support for, which is Newton Beach Park, the Times Square area, and Old San Carlos connections to the public space, and then improve connectivity across the island. And so I mentioned a little bit earlier that I'm working under this FEMA IRC, or Interagency Recovery Coordination field operations, with various federal and state partners. And so, the goal here is to bring these designs forward to them and try to leverage their future funding opportunities and incorporate design elements that will make the projects eligible and open it up for a variety of opportunities for funding resources to actually build some of these concepts and designs, or get us down the road a little bit further in the whole process of planning, engineering, and implementation. And so here's just a few of the federal partners we've been working with under that FEMA IRC effort. And so we've established a website that is to share all this information to the general public, and it will also have an opportunity for online survey feedback for those that are not able to attend us here in person today or over the next 2 days. We are having some open design workshops held here in this room tomorrow and Friday from 10 to 3 is open to anyone in the public to come by and participate in the planning process, share your feedback. What would you like to see? Any of those types of things, and we can talk through some of those types of concerns or limitations, and what kind of elements you might want to have as the town plans to recover or continue to recover from impacts to Hurricane Ian. And you can go to the there's a little QR code if you want to scan that, but also you can go to that website, the URL there. We will also be sending out a follow-up email to everyone who signed up with this information, so you can go and click on the link on your computer at home and access the survey that way. And then I would like to just quickly introduce and hand it over to our project team. That they are some national level experts in landscape design, architecture, and stormwater management. And Margaret,
Great.
take it away.
Thank you, Drew, and thank you, Mayor and Town Manager. We're very honored to be here this evening. As Drew was describing with the EPA R2P2 process, when that came about as recovery continues from Hurricane Ian, we responded to a request for proposals. And we responded because we realize how important your community and this entire region and all the things that you all have gone through and are going through. And so what we did was we put together a multidisciplinary team based on the needs and the resources that we could bring to assist with continued recovery. So I'm with Dover Cole and Partners, town planners and urban designers. We're based out of Coral Gables, Florida. We also have Bill Spikowski, who many of you may be familiar with its long history here in Fort Myers Beach and his office in Fort Myers, as well as the Horsley Witten Group, who is leading our team, and they truly are the leaders in sustainability and resilient and green planning. So we're honored. I also want to share that we've all worked together a lot, and we enjoy working together, and we enjoy working with communities. So once again, I don't want to say I'm happy to be here, because I feel that we're also here for a very difficult reason, but I'm honored to be here to continue to partner with your community. So here's the agenda for tonight. We're going to go through the process to date, and then we're going to go ahead and get into those focus areas. As we're going through that, we're going to share a lot of information about some initial thoughts and to get that feedback. And then we're going to do a quick we're calling it the lightning round, some sort of quick feedback, knee-jerk reactions to what we're sharing this evening, as well as some time to be able to spend closer to these boards talking with members of our team. So thank you for being here. Once again, recognizing the unexpected change in, you got this one? Did it go? There it goes, sorry. The unexpected change that can come from a disaster. And when we talk about resiliency and, resilient steps and methods for recovery and rebuilding, that goes beyond the physical environment. And when we were here for the site visit, I was really inspired and encouraged by some of the the initial reactions of the community of coming together. And I thought that the signs were so important. And I thought that was just really telling about the things to bring community together and grow stronger together and build one another up. Also, a lot of things to celebrate as recovery continues. You all are doing amazing things, and the community continues to grow stronger because people are so proud of Fort Myers Beach and that long, strong connection to the community. So at Dover Colon Partners, what we do, designing in public, visualizing change, and really coming up with plans with implementable strategies. We've done this in a lot of communities across the country, also focused on some recovery planning efforts. This is our work in Panama City, Florida, after Hurricane Michael. And we like to share this story because in addition to the physical planning that we were doing, it was also sort of part of that healing and recovery process. But by having a plan in place, so here were the existing conditions. And then one of the things that with Hurricane Michael, with a lot of the wind that came through, they lost so many trees. And so a big part of their rebuilding effort was looking at that green landscape as well as the physical landscape. This is also an example of our before and after images. So let's see, there's the before and then the after, showing what's possible. So a lot of what we do as planners is visualizing change so that you're able to actually see beyond just words, but what we mean by creating a center of town. What does that look like with trees and street-oriented buildings and safer spaces for pedestrians and the general public? So these were all images that came out of that time together while we were working on site in Panama City. And then by having that plan in place, which shared that community vision, the local government was then able to go and begin implementation. So a lot of what we're looking at is sort of public investment public improvements and private investment. So sort of merging those two things together to have a collective plan moving forward. And the built results today, it's really returned to the center of community life. It's on the front page of publications. The amount of economic development, but still maintaining the character of the place is really important. And so that's been a really fantastic story. This is another coastal community. This is St. John in the Virgin Islands. This was the 2017 storms of Irma and Maria. And we've been working with our friends at Horsley Witten on this project as well. And this has been really interesting because the legacy of town building with the historic town of Cruz Bay. And just once again, the recovery and healing, but also by having a plan in place. In Cruz Bay, what happened with them was much of their tourism economy got up and going really fast. But the things for the local community and the daily services, like this building here in the front, is one of their pre-K and elementary school buildings, and it's still without a roof. So it's sort of like how the public and the government buildings continue to recover. So we were working with the public to just sort of understand that community vision of building a greener, more resilient Cruz Bay town. Okay. But so we've done all that good recovery planning. But my favorite thing is back in 1998 when we got to come and work with you all for the original designing our downtown and working on the comprehensive plan. And so back in 1998, this is my favorite thing. I found some pictures. I went on our server and I was like, we need to find like what we did back in 98 because it really helped to set some of the groundwork for Old San Carlos and some of the other areas. So here's our beloved Bill Swikowski working with the community. And this was an opportunity to come together. And I want to also share this because it is important to come together, whether in good times or bad, but to come together and share those ideas and to create that collective vision. So just the opportunity to really shape the future of your town and to use this as an opportunity moving forward. So we have some special guests in the room. Very dedicated. Very dedicated. So, I just think this goes to show the pride and the dedication to the community and to your long history of town building. We were fortunate to be involved with Bill Spakowski with working with the community to shape the original town plan. When we did the workshops back in 98, 99, received a lot of attention, a lot of feedback from the community. We were also able to come back in 2005 and do a plan update. And so there's principal with our firm, Victor Dover, walking on Times Square, and other members of our planning team. And so I just wanted to share this because I think it's always interesting to look back at the past, but also think ahead to the future. And we're honored to be a part of that story and that journey with you all. Resilience goes beyond physical buildings, of course, but it's also about health and safety and connections, just preparations, and you all are doing so much of this. So I just want to say beyond just the brick and mortar of recovery and rebuilding, just by being a strong community, you're resilient. So let's get into our areas, our study areas tonight. So when the R2P2 process started, and once again, this is all on the website, and if you signed in tonight, we're going to send you a link so you can access all of this too. But the town of Fort Myers Beach was able to present us with a list of potential projects. We then started to take a look at the area and key focus areas. And from there, we sort of started to, we did a site visit where we got to meet with town staff and walk around, look around. Here we are at Newton Beach Park, and just try to get a better understanding of where we could be of most help. And so a lot of what we're doing with regards to the conceptual designs is also geared towards implementation and grant funding and potential other state, local, and federal funding partners. And so that's sort of also part of an end goal result. But so we selected the three areas that we're going to talk about tonight. One is improved island-wide connectivity, which is always on everyone's mind, storm or not. Newton Beach Park, what that looks like in its return. And then Old San Carlos and Times Square. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, John Ford with Horsley Winton Group, and he's going to walk through some of the connectivity thoughts.
All right. Thank you, Margaret. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Ford. I'm a civil engineer with the Horsley Winton Group. And as Margaret said, we heard loud and clear from the town and from a lot of you folks, connectivity is a top priority for the town and an opportunity for us to, I think, refresh a lot of the work that has been done over the years and decades in a way where we can connect with some of the other initiatives and the public and private investment that are ongoing now. So connectivity, I think a lot of folks think of congestion and vehicular congestion, and the town has been working for quite a number of years on alternatives. So we have cars kind of clogging the streets and parking lots, but are there alternatives? And the town has very strong goals in this regard with the comprehensive plan and the 2017 pedestrian bike plan for alternatives. So are there ways we can get folks here and back without a car and back and forth on the island in ways that kind of support a healthy Fort Myers Beach and other ways of getting around. And of course, there are limitations to that with the inherent geography of the long, skinny island, and there's only so much space within the right-of-way. So working through that balance is an opportunity, and I think a way we'd love to hear from you folks this evening, and especially over the next couple of days, of ways to balance the streets as a public realm and a way to get people back and forth, but also support local economy, provide shade, a livable, healthy Fort Myers Beach. So the goal is reducing the need of a car, but improving options specifically to do that. Public transit, pedestrian bike infrastructure, optimizing parking, and then using our streets as public realm to be happier and healthier places. So we've studied and started to put this all together onto one updated map, the 2017 plan, which was a data-driven plan looking at bike ped crashes and many other things to inform what the recommendations were for existing and specifically proposed pedestrian and bike facilities. This was 2017. This is a super plan. So I think our objectives here are really twofold. We're listening, we're liaisons. So we want to understand what needs to be updated in this plan to hear from you folks this evening, and then where we can kind of zoom in to make some improvements and do some drawings to help visualize that and lead for funding. So transit, the tram, we'd like to hear from you folks. We had within the last week an announcement from DOT funding the Sun Trail connection from Fort Myers Beach to Bonita Springs. So looking maybe, that's the blue line there circled with the dashed red. How can we get some of those improvements rethought maybe in Estero Boulevard on island? to make those connections and links happen. This is from the conceptual, the comprehensive plan 1999, but it continues to be a guiding principle, I think, for this network of hidden paths or ways for folks to get back and forth, ped bike, golf cart, scooter. What does that mean to you folks? And a way to not have to go to the boulevard, Estero Boulevard, for every single trip. Is there a way to get back and forth and kind of build that network? And we'd love to zoom in on that with you folks. So we put this all kind of together on a map. Of course, we have the DOT upcoming improvements that address safety and vehicular congestion, but how can we also have those serve other goals, whether they be economic development, livability, creating a great place and kind of knitting into the community in Times Square. So we've put all of that onto a map. This is, see top right, draft in progress. This is a working map. It's a starter, and we'd love to hear from you folks. You know, what are we missing? What's changed? A lot has changed, of course, and you folks are the experts. We want to hear from you. This is the map that's up there. I think there's one in the back of the room and one out there in the front that we can look at and put Post-its on and say, you know, I'd love to see a walking path here. One thing we added that's new is the idea of a ferry and water taxi. So we've drawn that on the map in a way that we think makes sense. An aspirational idea, we think that's one grounded in reality and that could move forward. We'd love to hear from you folks about that. So another way to get back and forth both on and off island and within the island, and how could that connect to pedestrian bike trail is something we'd love to hear from you folks. Couple sites to zoom in on. We'd love to hear from you folks. Are these the right sites? Are there other sites that if something's going to happen as part of recovery, how can the Hidden Trail Network, for example, is that dashed red line on the Red Coconut site, kind of wind through and connect through? And if that's a community priority that's expressed in previous planning efforts, how might that happen? Amberjack Drive as well, if there's an opportunity to connect to the waterfront in that location, what might that mean to folks? And before moving on, I have to just come back. We're green engineers. We really believe strongly that streets as part of the public realm, a complete street also is a healthy stormwater street. So how can we provide for more shade trees and stormwater management so that can kind of intertwine funding and public infrastructure funding for connectivity and also green and stormwater. Margaret had shown some of the work we did in Panama City, where we can provide soil cells that provide for healthy tree root volume and shade. So get that infrastructure serving multiple purposes. And with that, I'll turn it to my colleague, Ellen Biggert.
Hi, I'm Ellen, landscape architect with Horsley Witten Group, and I'm going to talk about Newton Beach Park. So Newton Beach Park, we've heard, is a loved asset for the community prior to the storm and is an important park within the overall network. But currently, these are pictures taken a few weeks ago. It's a bit of a blank slate, so it's still destined to be that community asset and a place for people to gather. But we want to make sure that when we're rebuilding, we're building what the community really wants and making sure we're including everything that needs to be there. There are certain parameters that we're still going to need to meet for the site, such as education, passive recreation, and natural vegetation and connecting out to the beach and the history, but we want to make sure that whatever we're putting there or starting to plan for is what the community wants to see. So to help aid that, we've just started to lay out a few diagrams to kind of help conversation get going while trying incorporating those things that need to be a part of the site, like the education and things like that. So on some of the boards, and here you could see is two diagrams really of how some of this can be arranged, as well as other things that could be incorporated. So the map on your left really has a larger parking area and a space that can be expanded for larger events with an open air pavilion, an area that could outline where the footprint of the building was to allude to the history of it, a space that can connect between a plaza and open space, so it could be a variety of sizes and events, as well as some openings towards the beach as well. On the right, it's where you have kind of smaller spaces, an educational pavilion and smaller parking, and then an expanded area that has more restoration planting towards the beach, and a potential other areas. So these are just samples of how we can start to arrange on the site, but we would really want to hear if there's other ideas or other things that you would want to include in Newton Beach Park to make sure that it is what the community wants to see. And just to highlight that again, we know that this is important. It's quite literally the center of the community, and to make sure it's a space that everyone loves and will continue to use. And hand it over to Victor.
Hey, I'm Victor Dover. Some of y'all know me. I was a lot skinnier in those old pictures. I don't know, Phil. But it's not my first time in Fort Myers Beach. I've loved the time we spent here, and I'm grateful to be back. So thank you for having us back. They saved the controversial and scary subject matter for me, so it's not scary. It probably will be controversial. But I want to tell you a little bit about what we're working on so far with regard to Old San Carlos, and then Times Square. The reason this is deeply important to me because I realized all those years ago that this was the psychological, emotional center of the island. It might not be on center like the quiet center neighborhoods are, but this is where the heart of the place is, and this is where everybody has the tight emotional connections. And not surprisingly, it's where a lot of effort's gone into coming back quickly. And so with Old San Carlos, I was reminded by those maps that Margaret showed a minute ago. The time you spend in these rooms and coming to these meetings and drawing lines on maps and stuff, you may wonder, am I wasting my time? Does that ever add up to anything? But things like the public space that's at the end of the street on the Bayside, along Old San Carlos Boulevard, that came from meetings just like this. I mean, from drawings just like that. And at the time, there was so much island to think about, so much comprehensive plan to do. But your leaders focused us on key areas where evolution was inevitable, but also necessary. And one of them was way over on the eastern end, where the high rises are, and the resort, and the red coconut. And guess what? Here we are, all these years later, reading about the red coconut in the paper. And then over on the eastern end, the bridge landing at Times Square and Old San Carlos, that heart of the island, was the other one where change was inevitable. And so one of those sketch plans that was on a table with people leaning over it with magic markers was the drawing where it kind of became an idea for Old San Carlos to become a great street again. It was no longer where the bridge landed, but it was still important. It no longer had the stone arch, but it was still important. And so that, those early sketches of the green space at the end of the street are the embodiment of that. But also the idea that the street could cohere again with buildings, street-oriented buildings, facing the sidewalks, and that people would want to walk back and forth. It was only a theory just a couple of decades ago, and it became real when you improved the street, when people started to fill in new buildings, replace old ones, and upgrade and planted the trees. Planned ahead for those sketches on the left side show. Planned ahead for the buildings where they meet the street, where you need shade to encroach and support your walking and cut the glare on the storefronts and so on, with awnings and cantilevered balconies and those kinds of features that ought to be normal in the heart of a beautiful beach town. So fast forward to the existing conditions, and some of your canvas got cleaned off again and ready to repaint. And other things are new and permanent and will remain. And the connection between Old San Carlos and Times Square became vivid again after the storm. So I want to talk a little bit about the rules so you know why we're drawing what we're drawing and why we're asking what we're asking, questions that we're asking. First, on Old San Carlos, there are a few development parameters or rules that establish what you can and can't do. And for one, new buildings have to be elevated. You've all been hearing about how the habitable floors, the upper floors have to be elevated. The amount by which you have to lift something up varies according to where you are. So the farther from the beach, the less you have to do. But closest to the beach, the higher the elevation requirements. This is not something that the town of Fort Myers Beach dreams up and enforces or creates. It comes from the Florida Building Code. This is a different regulatory system than the one we had a couple of decades ago. It's the Florida Building Code. And the town's responsibility is to review plans and approve buildings that comply with that code. And that's what requires the buildings to be lifted up. Then there's the question of how tall buildings can be. Building heights are regulated in Old San Carlos by two different documents. They're regulated by the comprehensive plan, or comp plan for short, and by the land development code. Those documents that when the town first incorporated, you created your first comp plan, and then you've been amending and updating since. So on Old San Carlos, the rules in those books say that you can build 2 stories above the flood elevation. That is 3 stories if you use the ground floor with dry flood proofing. These days, most of Old San Carlos permits that to be done. To make a long story short, dry flood proofing means you can drop the steel panels in between doors and windows, and you can enter right off the sidewalk into habitable space. The building has to be built differently than a building that's, say, closer to the beach, where you're not allowed to do this. The term they use for that is wet flood proofing, where all the stuff has to be capable of being washed through, that the storm surge or the flood can go through the ground floor of the building. So really we can have 3-story buildings on Old San Carlos Boulevard for the most part, up to, if you do the dry flood-proofed ground floor. And then there's what you can do in those buildings. The uses, to use the planner's term, the activities that can take place inside that building, whether it's residential or lodging or entertainment or what have you. Those uses are governed by those same 2 documents, the town's comprehensive plan and its land development code. Now, since we helped write these, I'm just going to say, they did not come from the Almighty. They were not handed down like the commandments. They are creatures of humankind. You all wrote them and adopted them, and you can change them. There are some limitations in the state law and in what's fair and legal and right, and you have those debates as you go. But they can be changed over time if you decide you want to change them. So that's setting the stage where we know upcoming big, important community conversations about what to do with those rule books, and hopefully you'll have calm and productive conversations. So to help you visualize, we think visually. We don't just make charts with words and numbers. As I told you, Anita, many years ago, you have to make your visions visual, right? So that's where those before and after pictures come in. And think of this as sketching. Even though we're making pictures in computers, it's still a lot like the early sketches that architects or engineers or landscape architects do in the beginning phases. This photograph shows existing conditions along a familiar street corner along Old San Carlos. And then we illustrated on the parking lot to the right side of the picture a what if. So this is an illustration of what if someone infilled a Fort Myers Beach worthy street-oriented building complying with those regulations on that street corner. And we took some liberties. We said, yeah, ice cream would be a good idea. If you like that land use, it's permitted. So I'm just going to drop that back, before and after. The reason to make these pictures is to help you visualize change before it occurs. In this picture, we also added, very modest public improvements, like making the crosswalks visible again. Do you see how the crosswalk's kind of not there in the before picture? And it doesn't take a lot of work to make high visibility crosswalks, so the motorists know that this is a place where a pedestrian might appear from time to time, or all the time. And this shows some street lights and things like that coming back in as part of the illustration. Now, I'll show you a second version. Here's 2 stories above the dry flood-proof ground floor. So you want to see that again? There's a 2-story building with a deep terraced setback on the second floor, and there's a 3-story building. So to get an idea of what the scale permitted by the existing regulations is, there's one of those 2 stories above flood buildings that are permitted along Old San Carlos. I'll take that back out and show you one more variation. Here, we of course, we added the palm trees back, but we also added, and you can see in the corners, some shade trees, because it is, something that you're going to want to think about on this hot subtropical island, adding more shade where you can. And then other kinds of things that can be changed without much effort. You can make special treatments of the intersections, for example. That's just an idea of a lighter, cheaper, quick kind of change to celebrate progress and return on the island. Now, I started with Old San Carlos on purpose because I knew Times Square was going to be kind of a lightning rod. Let's talk about Times Square. Anybody in the room remember when it looked like this? I actually do. A few of us. In the past, Times Square has always been this action center. It's always been a little bit eclectic. It's always been a little bit informal and relaxed. It's not dressed in a tuxedo. It's dressed in board shorts. And Times Square not that long ago went through a round of improvements, like the street improvements and the walking, the colorful tiles on the pattern, of course the clock, and it just kept getting better and better. And if you think about it that way, it was improving a decade at a time throughout its history, always ready for the group of leaders at that moment to make the next round of timely upgrades. I think we have to think of that's where we are now. Because of the changes coming, use this opportunity to make timely upgrades. We found it interesting that you all very quickly repopulated this part of the island, even though we lost buildings and we lost businesses, and we went into this great phase of uncertainty. As quickly as possible, people came back to Times Square, and it's very interesting to us to go there now, and without all the structures and businesses that were there before, people still flocking to that space, that there's still this attachment to that space. When we get up in the satellite and look down, this is a view from above, and it's kind of useful to look at it this way, where we see Estero Boulevard kind of hooking through. The big building on the upper right-hand corner is Margaritaville. The 2 green areas are the parks that flank Times Square on either side. So you see how Times Square kind of sits down in between them. And right in the middle of the picture, just to the left of the center, at the bottom, is the pier. There are a lot of lines on that map that regulate what you can do where. The lines that are established by the Federal Emergency Management Agency for flood insurance purposes and rulemaking, the 1978 Coastal Construction Control Line, the 1991 Coastal Construction Control Line. There are a lot of lines on that map, and they all have a little bit of regulatory implications. But they're, to compare with Old San Carlos, I want to show you the 2 key things. First, just like in Old San Carlos, new buildings have to be elevated. And just like in Old San Carlos, the elevation requirements are the highest the closer we get to the beach or to the water's edge. That's, again, coming from the Florida Building Code. And then when we get to building heights, just like on Old San Carlos, it's the Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code that are setting how tall you can build. But here the rule at present is 1 story above flood. And significantly, in the Times Square area, given the federal rules, we are not allowed to use that dry flood proofing technique. So the ground level of whatever is done there has to be prepared for wash through. And then, just like before, the activities, the uses on the land are regulated by the town through its Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code. So we went to sketching on this as well. And I want to talk a little bit about how this fits in with what all is going on simultaneously. To the leaders, to elected officials, y'all are the chief urban designers of your town. And so y'all are going to be presiding over, I'm sure, a wild and exciting community conversation about what to do. The more you visualize the possibilities and the alternatives, the more options you have in your head, the easier it's going to be for you to sort through the pros and cons and trade-offs and whether to agree with what you're asked to do or what your staff is recommending and so on. So, of course, that starts with existing conditions. We're in the process of generating multiple alternatives to walk through with you tonight, and we have those. We've got half a dozen of them, just to give you an idea of a range. And these vary according to how tall the buildings are, from not so tall or so much to a little more. These vary according to how much development there is, light or medium or a little heavier, how much change there is, how much coordination between the various property owners, of which you, of course, as the owners of the right-of-way, are one. They vary in that regard, too. I do want to make sure you know we're aware that the Times Square property owners and some of the business owners there have begun getting together and coordinating their own proposal. This is awesome. This is a good thing. This is exactly what we would hope in any town we're working in that the property owners would begin to do. And if we can start to merge these conversations, it's going to be great. So last night, how many of you went to the meeting last night at the Diamond Head where they presented this? Okay. So that's also on the table out there as a vision or one of the alternatives you can consider. As I'm sure they made very clear, the illustrations show, just like our illustrations, show some things that are not permitted by the existing rule books or easily accomplished without coordination among the multiple owners. So it's similar. So we're just going to try to widen up the possibilities so you all have more to think about. Now, these are numbered 1 through 6 so you can remember which is which, but we're going to look at them one at a time. So starting with the existing conditions, and I'll just use this little red dot. Can you all see it moving around on the screen? Red dot? Okay, so of course, the beach side here, and up on the north side where there are some existing buildings and buildings being restored, there's sort of a top band of the land, and then there's the middle section where you all own the town, own the Times Square right-of-way. And then there's the area seaward of that, and we're going to look at them kind of interchangeably and see what different ways each of them can be used. Well, one we called number 1 just because it was the lightest one, not because it's the number 1. Okay, we named beachfront park and food trucks, just looking for a name, with the thought that you might do something here where a combination of public acquisition of park space and lightweight and floodable structures and temporary or movable structures, and possibly food vendors that are gassed up and ready to roll away in the event that an emergency is coming. This is an option. So we'll look at that. What this shows is a kind of combination of those features that you would activate the area again. Let's see, going forward, right? That one. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. So number 1. And so at the upper left, you're seeing the existing structures, and then in the middle, you're seeing shade structures and temporary retail and food and beverage. The park could contain, well, whatever you want it to contain, but it should have some public gathering space and some place to just hang out. It should also have some place where there's shade and places to dine. And an idea illustrated here is that some part of it could be equipped with a stage where you could have performance space, and then the whole thing designed to make it easy to connect to a restored pier. And this is just looking around on the little computer model at those components. The thought is that in this one, the existing walkway at grade of Times Square would be maintained and would stay right where it is, and then you would flank it with the food trucks or the seating or the dining areas. Now, just to compare that to one that has more development on it, and I'm working my way up from least to most. This one we call option 2, which also has a beachfront park, but it has a layer of infill buildings between the existing ones on the north and the park. So this is a chance to make a new face for the park with the new structures. You could still have some of those temporary or movable components but you would have new buildings on the north parcel. And just to show that from the air so you can see what kind of thing it is. In the illustration, because this is what's talked about in the comprehensive plan, we put 1 story over the elevated base. And then you have to think about how the stair access and elevator accesses are coordinated between the multiple properties and buildings that can be built at once or incrementally. And then the park parts of this are much like the other one that you saw. So here's a view of that. One of the things we realized in studying it is that for this to be really successful, the ground floor of the building part would still need to be designed so that if you put parking under there, it was recessed and pushed back away from being right next to the edge of the public space. So that it doesn't look like you're having your picnic in a parking lot. Now, let's move on up to option 3. Here, we took out that park or lawn square kind of space and assumed that the space to the south of the Times Square right of way was also developed. So now the waterfront side has new buildings. You could still expand upon what the public has for walking around in public space, and basically sandwiched that between the existing restored buildings and new buildings. So this is kind of a combo where you have new buildings, especially on the beach side. You still have an elevated terrace, but you also have a ground level experience along the existing Times Square walkway. And so this is just a little different view of that, where you start to see there would be a layer of buildings right near where the walkway to the pier begins. So you have to start, now at this point, if we want to have a terrace, you have to think about ways to get people up there and also connect them to the pier. So 4 and 5 are similar, but they envision development on both sides of that walkway. And just to give you the overhead view to show this keeps the existing walkway where it is, but builds new buildings on both sides of it. Again, illustrated here is 1 story over the elevated base and with coordinating the access points. And it's possible to coordinate some pretty spectacular waterfront views from a terrace level above the buildings that are on the water side. And we did a little variation on this where, and this is all in the spirit of what if parts of this were allowed to be a little taller. So this isn't illustrating if all of it was taller, but what if, and again, this would require changing of the rules, some new buildings were allowed to have an additional floor. You could say, as you have done in other parts of the code which has incentives, you could say there's possible to have another floor in exchange for public benefits, like public access to the waterfront facing deck, as an example. Or whatever the public benefits are that you all discuss and negotiate. But as you start to loosen your regulations in order to allow more bulk in development, you have to think about what are the public benefits that are coming with that, instead of just all gifts. So the difference between those two is really subtle, but it's showing what happens with parts of it being allowed to have an extra floor. Now, option 6 is the one where the right-of-way itself, as we know it today, goes away. It's vacated, and the entire property from north to south is allowed to be renovated and redeveloped. That is, as one coordinated thing, and with it's a larger concealed parking level underneath. This does have the ability to get more parking under. And you can still get a waterfront public space of one size or another. There's a more dramatic change in how the pedestrian circulation works. In other words, Times Square is now in the air and kind of pushed over to a new location in this location instead of being where we always knew it in the past. And like all of these, this has possibilities. The views from an elevated deck toward the ocean side could be pretty spectacular, but you'll have to have that conversation about whether to do it. And then this, could also still have a potential waterfront mini park, not as big, in order to make that work. So call this 1 to 2 stories over the base. And a view from that same angle I've been showing you, showing the terrace level now lifted up. So those are called 1 through 6, and we put them on posters where you can get closer to them and see them larger. So we're looking forward to your feedback about that. Margaret?
Thank you, Victor. I also want to share for folks.
Nobody threw anything at me. Is this Fort Myers Beach?
Victor.
Thank you for your patience as well.
We would be remiss not to ask what he thought of the proposal last night, strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, lots of strengths.
Let's use the microphone. Yeah, come up the mic.
We're about to pass the mic, so
Yeah.
we'll get there.
Okay. Yes, for sure. What I also just wanted to say for folks that may be watching at home or maybe watching a recording of this after this evening, you can also go to the website, and all of the images that we presented this evening are live on the website, so you can get a closer look. So even if you're not here in person to walk around and see the boards, I encourage you at coastalflr2p2.com to take a look. So just a little bit wrapping up tonight. Take a closer look at the ideas online or in person. Come by and see us tomorrow and Friday. We're going to be working here in this room from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that's just a time to kind of come by, look over our shoulders, check in with us, and make sure some of the design sketches and options that we're showing are on the right track. Real important as well, we have placed a survey online. And so when you came in this evening, you may have received a piece of paper, like a card survey. That's just if you feel like you want to jot something down. Those will be available this entire week. But we're also understanding that some folks are also watching from home. There is a survey on the website as well that we encourage everyone to take a look at. And we will also be sending a follow-up reminder email. So this summer, getting some feedback, getting some response, moving into fall with a draft report. We're also going to, Thursday, we will, that's tomorrow, gosh. So Newton Beach Park, Times Square, and then on Friday having some focused meetings about neighborhood links and island connectivity. So you're welcome to come anytime. Those are just going to be some focus times to talk about those topics, and these times and dates are also posted on the website. But yeah, come by and see us, and that's what we really enjoy with the idea of getting to work together and sketch and illustrate and visualize ideas. So what you see around the room right now are a series of poster boards. And in just a minute, we're going to break up and go take a look at those. Website again. Here's what the website looks like with the survey, and you can go on there, and here's just like a sample page of what that looks like. So basically we've included all of the illustrations that you were able to see tonight, and you're also able to look at the website, and just ask a series of questions just to gather your feedback. You can also email us, reach out to us, but the main thing is we want to hear from you. Share it with your friends, conversation. Okay. So now we're going to do, I know a lot of information was presented tonight, from island connectivity to resilience to Newton Beach Park, Old San Carlos, and Times Square. And yes, you can do an online survey. Yes, you can talk to us. But we just thought, just like you suggested, let's just have some conversation open in the room right now. We're thinking maybe for about 10 minutes where we can just ask some questions and have some dialogue. And then after about 10 minutes, we can then break into smaller groups and just kind of take a look at some of the posters. So have the microphone. Testing, microphone testing. Testing. Good. Okay. So would you like to start us off?
Thank you for the presentation. I just think we would be remiss with you all in the room as subject matter experts, just to get a sense of what you thought last night of the strengths and weaknesses of the proposal last night. Be curious as to your thoughts and opinions.
Sure. Victor, would you like to handle that one?
I wasn't in the room last night.
Okay.
I just read the newspaper.
All right, so that's very true. We were not there last night. We've been following all the news articles. We've been following a lot of the community reaction and engagement online. We have been seeing that. This mic is on, right? Okay. You can't hear him. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So we have been watching online. We were not there. last night. But do you want to say, like,
Want them to make sure the handheld mic is working.
Okay.
We're about to switch to that.
okay, he's going to check it. You got it? Okay.
Don't change your mind about what the TV said, so we're keep adjusting.
Okay. Do you want to answer a little bit more to the questions?
About last night? No, we need to learn a lot more about their.
Okay. Okay.
But I think it's great that they got motivated to get out there one night before this. So. That's enough.
Okay. Okay. Other questions, comments?
Hello, my name is Terry Prasad. I'm part of the Times Square Committee, and we did not get out there one night before. We've been out there for 7 months. We've worked with both the mayor, who was supposed to be our liaison. We've worked with Anita, and the town has been well aware that we've been working our renderings. It was surprising to us that it came out one night after us because we were never aware that the town was working on renderings. No one had informed us. No one had solicited information from us. And looking at the renderings, one of the big part of Times Square is the connectivity and also the vibe with the people walking through, dealing with the small vendors and interaction. None of these proposals show that. You have a little park there with food trucks. I mean, is that what we want our town to be back? I mean, I live on this town. I don't want to see a ton of food trucks on this town. It does not bring us quality food that we need. So I hope that our elected officials will work with us in the right way and create Times Square that we all can enjoy.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Loggeman, and I'm also part of Times Square with my brother Chris Primo. I really liked what we saw last night. I thought that it was in a better direction, although I'm totally open and interested in looking at, what other people have to see. My comment, though, is about the park at the north end. Is there a way of doing a children's water park, not like slides and stuff like that, but where the water comes up and they can splash around, and maybe there's a playground there, but yet there's water activity all around it so that the kids can, so it becomes that family area and maybe, a place where you could picnic or a pavilion of some sort, but still have that water activity for the young children. I think that would be a lot more attractive than just a playground, personally.
In the north end, or which location were you?
I was talking about the first park that we were talking about.
Oh, Newton Beach Park.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I was talking about, I'm part of Times Square. I liked what we saw last night much better. I thought it fit our town and the vibe that we want, but as far as Newton Beach.
Where there could be a splash pad
I
for,
think that there should be like a little splash park for the kids or something that incorporates water, because that's what we are. We're a water community. And we want people to live on the outside of the houses. We didn't move here to live on the inside. We moved here so that we could be outside, both with our children and to have, especially, we want to bring young families and generate that. We need to have activities and things where they can do, not necessarily to a swimming pool, but, something where they can splash around and play, and then maybe a playground or a pavilion there. I think it would be a nice addition.
thank you. Another question?
Actually, I have a question about something I saw that your organization supported, which I thought was great. I love the connectivity portion of it to reduce traffic on the island and come up with creative ways of doing that. But I also like to go back to the reason, I'll go to Anita, of why we became a town and why we broke away from Lake County. Okay? We do have a lot of residents on the island. Okay? People that, like myself, who live there year-round. And many of us are considering putting our homes on the market and moving. The reason being, we're flooding. We have stormwater issues. We have, yesterday I had no water for half the day. Today our sewer line broke. And we could go from there. We have infrastructure issues that need to be resolved. And I think that they need to be one of the number one priorities above Newton Park. Not that I don't love the idea of Newton Park. But if we're going to live here, we need to be able to live here. Okay? And if residents can't stand it anymore, we're under so much pressure, and we're building new things that we do not have the infrastructure on this island right now to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Other question?
I'd like to speak to the issue of Newton Beach Park. I'm not quite sure if you all had input from the town with regard to our CellCab advisory board. So you do understand that we have a caveat from the state with regard to what we can put at Newton Park. It is an educational and environmental passive park. And we worked actually as an advisory board for about the last year, coming up with the ways to rebuild what it was that we had, because the community, the residents, the visitors all enjoy that park, as you mentioned as well. It is part of what we are as a community, and we want to put that back. When you talked about plantings, we really stress native plantings. Of course, I've got the garden club person here, so she really obviously is going to be passionate about talking about native plantings, which you didn't emphasize. I'm just concerned about the idea that we have walkways and we have the signage like we do at the Mound House, and that we rebuild what we had there. Certainly the restrooms, certainly the parking, but again, it is primarily an opportunity for that view corridor and a place to, excuse me, a place to enjoy the Gulf and have access to the Gulf. That was the intent all along. But hopefully that can happen.
Any other comments or questions before we break into smaller groups around the posters? We good? We appreciate everyone being here tonight as well. What I'd like to do now is, if our team of planners and landscape architects and engineers could raise their hands or stand up so that we know who's part of the team. We've got Andrew Georgiadis in the back, Bill Spakowski, Ava, Steve, John, Ellen, and Ellie Baker with Horsley Witten. And so we're going to station ourselves at these various posters. There were duplicates of the posters because we realized we were going to have a good crowd tonight. So we wanted to make sure we kind of spread them out. So, they're kind of, there's some Times Square up here, as well as Old San Carlos. I know that the Newton Beach Park and the connectivity are in this back corner, as well as in the front lobby area. So let's just take a look. We also have some Post-it notes. If you want to write a note and stick it on there, that's great. But just to start to have those conversations, I encourage you also to come by tomorrow as well as Friday, whenever you get a chance, and just come by and continue that conversation with us. So with that, if you want to come and take a closer look, and once again, everything's on the website too. So if you're like me, I like to really zoom in, you can do that on the website also. And you can download the images as well. So, all right. So help yourselves, take a look around, ask us questions, and thank you for your feedback. We appreciate it, and complete the survey. Thank you.